And until other country or other conferences start to invest at the same level, this is going to continue. And, he used the example that a lot of coaches or a lot of programs are going to fire their coaches right after the season ends and look for somebody new because they aren't happy with where the program is at the moment. And he's like, if those schools don't invest the dollars to give whoever the new coach is the resources, they're going to be running the same coaching search in 4 years.
All right. I try to keep them coming. I'm trying to keep them coming. I have had fantastic guests in the past, and I'm bringing another heavy hitter. I'm your I am your Press. Yes, I am Preston, but I am your host, Preston Jackson. But I have my guest. Let me intro her first. 1 second. 20 years covering college athletics from major outlets such as Time Warner, Bright House, Spectrum, and CBS. She's also the first woman in Florida to host a solo drive time sports talk radio show, and she's the mom of 5 kids. If you are a Florida Gator, you're going to know the name. We're going to bring you Ali Peek Wilbur. Welcome to the show, Ali.
Hey, Preston. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We worked together a few different times, and you've always done fantastic work. You are the voice, if you will, of Florida athletics. I see your tweets. You're all on top of Florida athletics, period. Even gymnastics. Were you a gymnast by chance back in the day?
I was not, but my daughters are very into gymnastics right now. And they're only 10, so we will see what happens there. But both of them say they want to compete for the Gators, so we shall see.
The awesome Florida helmet in the back in the picture. Who's the stud in the picture?
This is my grandfather, Scotty Peek Sr. My dad, my grandfather, and my brother and my husband all played for the Gators, but there is only there's actually now 4 families that have 3 generations at Florida football. Now that Burnell Brown III is at Florida as a freshman, he's the 4th to have 3. So it doesn't happen very often. So I'm pretty proud of it.
That's pretty dope. That is pretty dope. All right. So let's jump into it. Give me your background. Where'd you grow up? How'd you jump into sports?
So I grew up in Tampa, huge Gator family, as I mentioned, and we just kind of were always around sports. My parents had season tickets. My dad, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. My dad would take all 7 of us up to Gator games starting at, a ridiculously probably unsafe age, right? Like this man just bringing children into the stadium. And I just always kind of fell in love with it. And my parents really believe that there's a lot of lessons that get taught in youth sports, something that I feel really passionately about. I know you do as well. And so that's just kind of always been an underlying theme of our family and kind of my life personally. From Tampa, there's a lot of great high school rivalries here. I went to Tampa Catholic. My dad and all my brothers went to Jesuit. That was just a very, natural kind of rivalry within our family that took place. And I just always knew I wanted to do this. I've been in love with particularly college football, but really all sports for as long as I can remember.
I did not know you went to Tampa Catholic. I just found that out. All right. So during the slump, that 22-year slump where Tampa Catholic had not beaten Jesuit, how internally?
I was a freshman cheerleader on the sidelines. The game took place at Hillsborough High School because Tampa Catholic didn't have a stadium at the time. That was when Tampa Catholic beat Jesuit for the last time until it happened just recently. I was a freshman at TC.
That was the Kenny Kelly days?
No, Kenny Kelly was before that. This is Brian Garcia, Gary Garcia.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of who else, but like Daryl Jackson, Kenny Kelly were a few years beforehand. And I think it was a lot more even-handed. The rivalry was leading up to me coming to school, but we won as freshmen and then lost the next 3 years. But they did get a basketball state title and a baseball state title and a soccer state title when I was there. So they weren't bad at every sport, just not great at football.
Go Crusaders. Baseball just beat, would depend on people
Jesuit.
Will see this, but yes, baseball, Tampa, the Crusaders just beat Jesuit. And that rivalry, I like it because you have 2 really good coaches now with Paulie on one side, and obviously Coach Menendez is going to be a legend. So I think that's going to be a back and forth thing, which is going to be great for that rivalry.
For sure. And I think sometimes people forget Tampa Catholic is actually one of the winningest baseball programs in the state of Florida. So while Jesuit has found more success recently, Tampa Catholic has, I want to say it's 10 or 11 state titles since the school was founded in the 60s. So, not too shabby there. But yeah, they won 6-1. My husband had a couple of my kids there. My nephew is a freshman at Tampa Catholic. And it is just such a fun rivalry. It doesn't matter the sport. TC Jesuit is just fun. It's going to be electric. Both of those schools are so generational. You've got kids that I graduated with, they have children at Tampa Catholic, or people that are my age that graduated from Jesuit, their kids are there. My dad went there. So he's watching his kids and then his grandkids at these schools. It makes the rivalry more intense because the families really stay the same.
Talk about staying the same. The Gators on the basketball court have not. They've elevated their game to the Final Four, and this is what you're good at. So this is why I brought you on here. Let's talk some Gator athletics. Obviously, Florida's going to play Auburn here in the Final Four. This will be the second time playing them this season. And Walter Clayton Jr. and those guys are playing fantastic. Tell me about, let's just go back to the Texas Tech game, all right? And let's propel for it. I'm sure you watched that game. You don't miss any Gator stuff. But did Florida win that game, or did Texas Tech lose that game?
So that's a great question. Florida has not played great basketball in the tournament. They have not played as good a basketball as we have seen them play during the regular season. But I am also of the mindset that sometimes great teams have games that are less than great, but what separates them from the good teams is the ability to overcome their mistakes and win anyway. And I think that that's what you're seeing from this Florida Gator team. They refuse to quit. And so, I'm sure Texas Tech fans view it differently. They probably think they gave that game away. But when you think about the clutch gene that Walter Clayton Jr. has at the end of that game, and I see the argument that, hey, if he'd played better in the first half, maybe we wouldn't be in this position. But they were in that position, and they figured out. ESPN had about a 96% chance Texas A&M winning that, or Texas Tech winning that game, and Florida pulled it out. I think this team doesn't know how to quit, and that's incredibly dangerous in the tournament.
Start getting your thoughts together. I just want to talk about your X factor on that team, all right? And then what you may see in this next round versus Auburn. When I see Florida play, I see a highly competitive defensive team, a more heart-driven, passionate team, more so than athletic. I think they play fast. I think they cover the court very well. I think they have some surprise guys that when you watch Florida play, they don't jump out. But if you're watching the scout Florida, you're like, yo, we got to stop that guy. So this is where that question comes in. Who's that player, in your opinion, that when the opposing coaching staff turns on Florida film, outside of Walter Clayton Jr., who do we need to neutralize?
So I think Will Richard has had a fantastic tournament. There were points in time in every game of this tournament where it almost felt like he was the only person giving full effort at times. He has just been a spark plug, kind of had a rallying cry for the rest of the team. I think he is an incredible piece to this puzzle. I think Elijah Martin has played just, out of this world. But really, Tommy Haug is somebody who, everybody talks about Alex Condren, right? But Tommy has had such a strong performance, more so than Alex. And, Alex was hurt at some points. And so, maybe you take that into consideration. But I feel like Tommy has been incredibly clutch this tournament.
Okay. Going into Auburn, you got the Gator fans out there. They're going to want to hear, and maybe I need to cut this to make sure we watch this before the Final Four.
Right.
All right. What are the keys to the game versus Auburn here the second time around for the Gators?
So it's always harder to beat a team that you've already beaten, right? Like if I'm playing a regular season game and I'm playing an SEC championship game, I probably would prefer to be the team that lost the first time around. I think you almost have a chip on your shoulder. Now, that's kind of what Saban always says, you want to be the team that's lost. I don't know if statistics support that or not, but that's how I feel. I feel like I would rather be coming from the underdog role. Florida won 90-81 when they played in early February. Interested to see what's going on with Johnny Broome. Is he healthy? He didn't look healthy at the end of the Auburn game. How sore is he? How much is he able to contribute? But I think for Florida, they've got to focus on playing their own game. I already
Okay.
mentioned to you that they have not played what I would call a complete game this tournament. It almost feels like they're due, right? If they out rebound Auburn, that's going to be
Right.
a key. Now they did hit a lot of free throws against Texas Tech. They did really well there. They did not against UConn do well with free throws. So that is something that they will need to make sure that they stay on top of. And they've got to play defense. But if Florida plays Florida's game, it's hard for me to picture anybody beating them, honestly. Like, I really feel like they are such a complete team. They have 10 guys that they rotate on a regular basis. Think about that.
Right.
Most of these teams, like when Florida played Maryland, Maryland has the Crab Five, right? They have 1 or 2 guys that they're willing to rotate in there.
Right.
Well, we saw where that difference came. Florida had 10, right? You get people in foul trouble, or God forbid an injury happens or something like that. You're short staffed at that point. Florida's not. Florida has the bench numbers to really pretty much overwhelm anybody, but they need to come out hot and stay hot. I don't love this having to come from behind the second half.
Right.
They've got to come out dominant from the beginning.
You do a really good job of being objective, even though you cover Florida. Your heart's with the Gators, but you do. I've seen your stuff. You do a really good job being objective. ESPN currently has these teams pretty evenly matched. Okay, with Auburn with a slight advantage, and depends on the publication that you're looking at. I'm just looking at my computer over here to my right. In your opinion, who has the advantage where?
So I think Walter Clayton Jr. is probably the best guard in college basketball. So I would say that they have an advantage there. I think Florida has a bench depth advantage. I think Auburn has a coaching advantage. This is such an interesting matchup between Bruce Pearl and Todd Golden, because Bruce Pearl is Todd Golden's mentor. So you've got, the teacher and the student. And I want to say they're 2-2 against each other. The 4 times that they've played where both were head coaches. Bruce Pearl has nothing but wonderful things to say about Todd Golden, and vice versa. Bruce Pearl was SEC Coach of the Year. I think there's a large argument to be made that Golden could have also been honored. And Pearl said that. He said if he was giving it to somebody, he'd give it to Todd Golden. Mm-hmm. Pearl has tons of tournament experience, right? This is all new territory for Todd Golden. Right. He's 39 years old. I think that if he's smart, he's calling Billy Donovan. He's getting a lot of kind of expertise thrown his way from guys that have been here, because he literally hasn't. And I think a coaching advantage can be a massive one. I always, I thought the seeding was so interesting in this tournament, because Auburn really didn't play well the last month of the season, and it was almost like everybody forgot or didn't care when they came out with the seedings. I don't think and we talk about who has the advantage, and Florida beat Auburn straight up. The only time they played each other, Florida won. So we got an answer on the court. Will that answer be different this time? Potentially. That it's like a whole new season when it becomes tournament time. But these teams are really evenly matched. But I would be hard pressed to be able to say Florida doesn't have the overall advantage. We've watched this once already.
We've seen this story, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Is the SEC the best men's basketball conference now? With 14 teams having representation, with 14 teams having representation in the 64, are they the best? Is this the best conference? And how long is it? How long has it been the best conference?
So this is a great question. I had Seth Greenberg on my YouTube show last week, and I asked him this exact thing. Like, is this an anomaly, right? That the SEC got this many teams in, or is this the new norm? And he said he thinks it's the new norm. And he basically said he thinks that the reason that it is the case is because the SEC has invested more in NIL and facilities than any other conference in the country. And until other conferences start to invest at the same level, this is going to continue. And, he used the example that a lot of coaches or a lot of programs are going to fire their coaches right after the season ends and look for somebody new because they aren't happy with where the program is at the moment. And he's like, if those schools don't invest the dollars to give whoever the new coach is the resources, they're going to be running the same coaching search in 4 years. So it's not just about the man leading the program anymore. It's about the dollars you give him to build the program. And I think the SEC has done that better than anybody else, and unless that changes, we are going to continue to see the SEC dominate in basketball.
It's all comes down to resources. At the end of the day, it comes down to resources. Can you manufacture them for your program? And the SEC, and that's a big reason why Texas and Oklahoma jumped over to the SEC. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma were the Big 12. Why would the two foundational pieces in that conference jump to the SEC? Well, the revenue sharing is a lot different in the SEC. The ability to gravitate, get those resources, a lot different in SEC. It's a different type of ball. Okay, so like Coach Greenberg said, if they don't figure out how they're going to bring this in, it's going to be a revolving door because you're not going to be able to compete.
Yeah,
you're just not going to be able to compete. The NIL is a different beast.
It is, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in April. When revenue sharing begins and how that's going to happen. And we saw Nate Oates at Alabama. He's testing the water with Maryland. And part of that is because he thinks the SEC spends too much money on football and not enough on basketball. So what will change with that in April? Will basketball end up with less resources? Will they have the same? Will we just go back to cash handshakes under the table? I mean, that's my guess. But this is all kind of changing by the minute. But as long as the SEC commits the resources more than anybody else, they're going to win more than anybody else.
Did you follow Walter Clayton Jr.'s recruitment when he was coming out of high school?
I did not really. And so, he wasn't highly recruited. And truly, if you look at Florida's starting 5, you could look at their starting 10. Most of them weren't highly recruited, which is such an interesting thing. I saw, I believe it was Elijah Martin, sent out a text message. I don't know if you saw this on social media, but he sent out, it was either Elijah Martin or Will Richards, but sent out a text message to the entire team with a collage of players and coaches at mid-majors. And he said, "We are the underdog. Remember where you came from." Because none of them are these just highly rated 5-star studs that you just, that everybody wanted. They are workhorses that out hustled everybody else, and have a lot of heart. And I think that kind of reminds me of the 05-06 Gator basketball team, where it's really truly just a group effort, which I think is somewhat rare in college basketball. And they were playing for each other for the right reasons. They cared about their school, and they had more heart than anybody else.
Let's jump slightly. We're going to jump to the NFL and the NBA. Last year, the NFL laid out a Christmas Day menu, if you will, of games. And the first thing people thought about was like, yo, NFL, you guys got Thanksgiving. NBA has Christmas. Like we're watching basketball on Christmas, but obviously football is king. So a lot of us are going to watch football over basketball. What was your impression when you first heard that the NFL was going to lay out a slew of games on Christmas Day to automatically compete with the NBA?
Well, the NFL does what the NFL wants, right? And as you said, the NFL is king. So everybody else kind of has to, acquiesce to their whims, I guess. But I don't know that there is a huge amount of crossover between the two. I think the NFL has their diehards, the NBA has their diehards, and then you have the middle crossover that enjoys both sports. And I think those people are picking what they're watching based on which particular games are on. If you're a Lakers fan, you're going to watch the Lakers regardless. If you're a Cowboys fan and they end up playing, you're going to watch the Cowboys regardless. But what I would be interested to see is what the viewing numbers were compared to previous years, taking into account the fact that the NBA's viewership is down. Is the drop proportional to what it is any other game, compared to 5 years ago? And if it is, maybe it didn't affect it at all. I do wonder if the NFL did that at all because of the changes to the college football playoff,
Ah,
There is now another player in the scheduling, right? And obviously NFL is still king over college in terms of viewership, but those college games are incredibly compelling because they are postseason at that point.
right.
And I think that's a factor too. NBA games in December just aren't that important. NFL
Mm-hmm.
games in December are fighting for playoff spots. And so
Right.
that is always going to be the more compelling story there too. But, I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but I felt like the playoffs just kind of dragged on for college football this year, even though I am a fan of give me all the football, give me more games. I'm here for all of that, but I wish it didn't take so long. And I almost wonder if they'll adjust that model and if there'll be some sort of agreement with the NFL, and maybe the NBA does suffer because of it, because they take over some of those marquee spots like a Christmas Day. But I just kind of feel like the NFL is the 800-pound gorilla that we all just kind of work around.
I love the way you put that. I was not a fan of the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
The only thing I did like, and this is selfishly speaking, because Notre Dame made the final game,
Yeah.
and then you could not say that we were there for some illegitimate reason. All right,
Right.
we
Right.
worked our way through there with
Right.
how they aligned us in the tournament, so we earned our spot. There are
Sure.
plenty of Notre Dame haters. It's enough for everybody, right? But at the very least, you can't say that we were just given that opportunity. Now,
Right.
put that on the shelf over here to the left. I'm still not a fan of the 12-team playoff because it makes such a long season for the amateur
Yeah.
athlete. Okay, by
Mhm.
definition, you now take kids who are playing a 12, 13 game season. You're now having them play 16, 17 games. That's an NFL schedule.
Yep.
Okay, let alone the other responsibilities that they do have at that time of year because they're student athletes or athletic students. Those
Yeah.
other requirements are still in play. They don't just stop
Yeah.
just because you're in the tournament. Okay.
Right.
And then you add in all the traveling. This is a whole nother issue that we may want to tackle at another point. When you talk about teams in the moving conferences, such as the California teams jumping into the Big Ten and all that traveling that they're having to do on a bi-weekly basis to go play cross country. All right. A whole nother conversation. So to answer your question directly, it did drag on. It did drag on. It was a long college season. It came to a point at some point, but that point could have happened 2 weeks earlier. Okay,
100%.
I don't think it needs to be 12.
100%.
I don't think it needs to be 12 teams. That's a lot.
I
And I
think so.
know the more games, the more money. The NCAA is $1 billion company, but it's a long season for amateur athletes.
And it devalues the regular season. And that's always been my argument. The thing that makes college football unique is that every game matters. And I get the argument that maybe we had some games matter that wouldn't matter normally. We were pumped for Florida Ole Miss. That knocked Ole Miss out of the playoff, right? Like that game would not have carried the same amount of weight if they weren't fighting for one of those last playoff spots. But it also made, arguably the two biggest losses of the year, Ohio State and Notre Dame's losses, not matter at all, which I don't really love either. The biggest issue I had this year with the playoffs is the way that they did seeding. I don't mind a conference champion automatically getting in. I mind them getting the top 4 seeds because I think that makes it makes some really uncompelling games because you've got some where this team is incredibly overmatched. They're going to get their ass kicked. And then it makes some teams have a much harder path than they probably earned through the course of the season. And so if we're going to give 4 automatic spots to 4 conference champions, we still have to rank them 1 through 12, and if you get in at 12 and maybe you would have been ranked 16 had you not won your conference, then fine. That's where you go 12, but you shouldn't be coming in as a 9 seed, but you get a 4 seed because you happen to win your conference, a conference that generally, there's a 7 seed and an 8 seed that probably could have won. Like when you look at the SEC teams that don't win their conference, most of those would win every other conference outside of, the Big Ten. So I hope we tweak that. I think, I don't know. College football is unique. I don't want to make it like every other sport. I want it to still be special. I want the games to matter. I do love that we saw less opt-outs this year. That makes the bowl season more compelling, I think. And I like the bowl games. These are rewards. This for the hard work that went in the season. I want these third string guys that didn't see the field during the regular season to have an opportunity to play in the bowl game and get a bowl gift and go to a city they've never been to. Like, I think all of those are a part of the college athlete experience, and I don't want
Right.
that to go away. But I just, the sport feels a little bit broken, and I just don't want us to continue to lose our way so much that we don't have those generational fans. I always tell people that diehards aren't 60-year-old men that can afford boxes. They didn't start that way. Diehard fans are the 8-year-olds that went with their dad for the first time and caught a wristband, from their favorite player. And that cemented it. That's what made them a Gator for life or a Buckeye for life or whatever. And I just think some of the changes we have made make it harder for me to see a generation of 8-year-olds growing up to continue to love this sport forever and ever. And that is a fear of mine.
That was great. And here's the problem. What was great with what you said is you stole my thunder, because I knew I just wanted to get on. Hey, we're going to have some good TV now. I'm going to lead her into this question, and then I can take an opposing view on it. I know she's going to say this. I'm going to take an opposing view. Let's have some good debate. However, we're going to agree. I do not agree with the seeding. Okay.
Yeah.
I do not agree that just because you're a conference champion, that makes you one of the top 4, that you should get a top 4 seed when there are teams in the SEC, mid-ranked teams that could beat you. All right.
So yeah,
absolutely. And all conferences are built the same. All right. I do think that there should be an award for winning your conference if that's what we're asking you to do. But that does not mean you're one of the top 4 seeds. That does not mean that at all. So you messed me up with that. I was glad that you agreed, but then it sucked because I was ready to have some good conversations, good TV for us. All right. Well, let's keep moving. I talked with Catherine Smith, and she was fantastic as usual. Shout out Catherine. And we were just talking about how women have evolved in sports coverage, media coverage, more so not as a presence within sports media, but actually as a valued voice and knowledge base for the sports in that space. Do you agree or do you disagree? And where do you see women in the sport going from here?
I do agree. I think that we have gone away from what used to be, I think, like a, I don't know, kind of a trophy on the sidelines, right? Like, we're going to put this pretty girl down there. We're going to ask her to ask about injuries and the weather and, whatever at these 3 bites a game. And that's going to be it. I think that we have seen women more involved in sports talk shows. We've seen women calling play-by-plays. And the reality is this: anybody that is a good storyteller should have the ability to be on a platform where they can tell those stories. And our experiences all come from different things. I personally love hearing play-by-play from somebody that played, right? I feel like I learned something. The insight is different. That's not a realm that I have necessarily had an interest in getting into. I think that I listen to people's stories well, and I have the ability to kind of ask questions that get maybe more of an emotional response or a different response than maybe the next person that asks that question. I think that there is value to that. I think everybody brings a little bit different to the table, and you earn your spot. You should earn your spot regardless of gender. If you have a skill set that is applicable to the moment, then great. And if you don't, I don't want you to be hired because you're a woman or because you're a man or whatever for that particular role. Like, just earn your spot and let's go.
I love Rebecca Lobo when she calls games. Tiffany Green I'm a fan of hers.
Tiffany Green is fantastic.
We came out of Hillsborough High School. She's a class ahead of me. But then ultimately my favorite might be of all. Well. I like Tony Romo too. Tony Romo, I love hearing Tony Romo call games. But when Doris Burke calls NBA games, she's like the best.
Yeah.
The best. I can listen to Doris Burke call games. Every game she calls, she knows what she's talking about. She's able to tell stories. She has such a good feel for the game and her timing, and when she delivers a message, and when she delivers stats, and when to pause, and when to shut up. Doris Burke is really good. She might be top 3. I like Romo a lot.
Romo's great.
Romo's great too. But you you hit on something, and I kind of want to move this ball along just slightly. The relationships is, just getting into any industry is kind of who you know,
Mhm.
right? It's not necessarily what you know, but it's who you know.
Yeah,
Obviously,
for sure.
hard work. You got to work hard. You got to do a good job. All the stuff that we teach our children that were taught to us matters. Those merits matter. But move along to the whole Joy Taylor scandal, okay, or drama, whatever the heck you want to define it
Yeah.
as. When that stuff started coming out, did that give women in this sports media space a bad rap?
Yes, but my caveat to that is I think it would have given anybody in her position a bad rap, if that makes sense. Like if
Yes,
it's, but yeah, I think that the knock on women since women began broadcasting in any capacity has been that they slept their way to the top, right? That is
right,
always the uh, oh, she's a pretty face, she must have slept her way to the top. That is
right.
what's been said about women in sports for as long as this has been happening. And she
Mm-hmm.
proved it true, right? And so that, people that have been working in this space for decades the right way, working hard, learning their craft, mastering it, getting out, making relationships, doing all the right things, does it make people say, oh, I wonder if that's how she got there too? I think it confirms everybody's worst fears when something like this happens. It is important to remember that it's a one-off, right? Like this is not how every woman got to where they are. But it's a black eye for sure.
I'm going to give a statement, and I want you to agree or disagree, then justify your stance. All
Okay.
right, ready?
Mm-hmm.
UConn guard Paige Becker is not receiving as much or the same type of media attention Caitlin Clark was receiving last year.
That is true. And I can tell you why, though. That's like asking me, why does Anthony Davis not get the same type of media accolades as LeBron James? And, because he's not LeBron James. And, I think Paige is a fantastic basketball player. One, she plays for UConn. This is a team with just rich women's basketball history. It's less of an anomaly to have such a stud play for you because they have a massive laundry list of studs that have played for them. I think it's much more of an anomaly that in the middle of Iowa, Caitlin Clark was looking like Steph Curry out there hitting threes. And so I don't think that she's being disrespected by it. I don't think that there's bias involved. And I think she's a really great player. I just
Mm-hmm.
think the situations are a little bit different.
Fair enough. I agree. And it sucks that I have to agree because I'm 0 for 2 right now. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna set her up. We're gonna we're gonna debate. But I do agree. I think that the storyline, especially for the media, take everything else, all variables stay the same. Okay. The media can gravitate towards a young lady who stays in the state of Iowa, plays for her home school, comes from a team that's not tradition rich, and propels them to the championship game 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And then let alone that she's a great freaking basketball player, right? I
Heck of
think
a mess.
that is the story that a lot of people can grab a hold of, and it's that underdog story. The
Yeah,
media
of
kind of loves this underdog story,
course.
and she never really had a drop off. Like the
Mhm.
more they built her up, the more the media built her up and built her up. She almost always rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
And then she looks like most of America, from a middle of America, where
Yeah. Hmm.
okay, well she's good, and I guess she's good. And
Yeah.
the storyline for that is when the media sees that, it's like, yo, we got something. Here's the golden nugget. This is our golden
Yeah.
goose, and we're gonna run with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And Caitlin Clark's an incredible story, and it was so fun to watch, and it brought so many eyes to women's basketball, and all of that is such a positive thing. They say a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's how I think about situations like that. The entire sport was elevated because
Oh
of
yeah,
her. There will be women that have more opportunities down the road because of her story, and I think that's pretty
oh
cool.
yeah. All right, let's have a little fun with this last segment.
All right.
I'll give you two names. You got to pick. Don't ask any questions. No more details. I'll give you this person versus that person. You pick your answer. That's it. Okay.
Okay.
The first category is going to be Florida football. Second category, Florida basketball. And then you got a miscellaneous.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Rex Grossman or Shane Matthews?
Ooh, Rex Grossman.
Daryl Jackson or Riche Caldwell?
Ah, Shea Caldwell. That's hard.
All right. Fred Taylor or Emmitt Smith?
Oh, Emmitt Smith.
Okay. Here we go. Moving into basketball.
Okay.
Corey Brewer or Mike Miller?
Oh my goodness. Give me Corey Brewer. He was my graduation year.
All right, here we go. This is going to be kind of tough. Ready? Jason Williams or Walton Clayton Jr.?
Walter Clayton Jr.
All right. Here we go.
I feel very much a prisoner of the moment, but I feel like that, I also feel like it's the right answer.
All right, here we go. Here you go. Miscellaneous. Last couple. Paige Beckers or Caitlin Clark?
Caitlin Clark.
Terrell Owens or Randy Moss?
Ooh. Give me Tio.
All right, last one. Josh Allen or Joe Burrows?
Give me Joe Burrows.
You did pretty good. You did pretty good. All right. So before we get out, I need you to promote all the shows that you're a part of, lead viewers into the direction to see the stuff that you've been producing.
Okay, well, you can find me on YouTube, A Peek Inside Florida Gator Football. That has been the channel I've got the longest, but I also have A Peek Inside the SEC up and running now as well, which has been really fun because I get to talk about the entire conference and kind of interact more with some other fan bases that I don't, normally interact with. I am on Twitter, although my Twitter was hacked about 2 months ago. And so I now have a new one. It's at Allie_Peek. But if you interacted with me before and now you can't find me, that would be why. But yeah, the YouTube platform has been fun. I'm going to have you come on and talk some prep sports. There's so much good talent in the state of Florida right now that we definitely need to get some exposure on it.
Just let me know whenever I will be there. Let me know. Send me the calendar date and I'm good.
All right, cool. Let's do it for sure. This was fun. We definitely need to do this again. This was great.